Welcome back to Horn Legacies, a series of mini interviews with famous horn players. Today we're talking with former second horn of the Philadelphia Orchestra and educator extraordinaire, Randy Gardner. For those who maybe don't know who you are, could you give us a quick rundown of your horn playing career and what you're up to now?
Yeah, sure. And first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for this opportunity. I appreciate your invitation and look forward to our chat together here. So I began my performance career as second horn of the Miami Philharmonic, and after just a season, won an audition to become the second horn player of the Philadelphia Orchestra, which for me was the perfect position in the perfect orchestra on the planet. I am incredibly grateful for the career I had in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and when I began, I was second horn to the legendary, iconic Mason Jones. And through my career, I also enjoyed working with world-class colleagues throughout the orchestra, great conductors, great soloists. It was an extraordinary experience. I played for music directors Eugene Ormandy and Riccardo Muti and Wolfgang Sawallisch. And after 22 years, I moved into the academic world, where I was a horn professor and chair of the Winds Brass Percussion Department at the University of Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, which was an ideal place for me to move into academia. I loved the program I was able to develop and establish there at CCM. And all the while, I continued to perform. I played with Philadelphia Orchestra virtually every season as a substitute or extra player, and I had opportunities to play in so many of the great orchestras. And in addition to Philadelphia, in recent years, I performed for 2 months as a substitute with the New York Philharmonic. I toured with the Cleveland Orchestra to Asia and other opportunities. So, if I could have, designed my dream career when I was in college, this would have been it. I've lived my dream, and I am so grateful for that. And have had just amazing experiences. And at CCM, I was able to really develop my ideas that I had had for many years. While I was in the Philadelphia Orchestra, I taught at Temple University, I taught at the New School of Music and other schools. And so I've always had an equal passion for performance and teaching. And I mean, that's just even from from the first student I taught when I was a student at IU. Um,
Can I
so
ask,
yeah,
after 22 years of playing full time,
yeah.
what made you want to transition into academia?
I'd always wanted to have a two-part career. Like I say, I have equal passion for performing and teaching. And maybe about 5 years before I actually, was appointed to CCM, I started looking for openings. And when an opening would appear, I would contact friends of mine who were in academia and say, well, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And when CCM opened up and I contacted some friends of mine, I just got green lights everywhere. And so I applied for that one and was fortunate to be appointed. Yeah, and I had uh, an opportunity to add some courses that I enjoyed teaching and I thought were very valuable for the students. Um, I initiated a horn choir that met 2 hours a week. We had studio class for 2 hours a week. One of the first things I did was to purchase, or the school purchased, two natural horns from Rick Serafinoff. I make no pretense in being a great natural horn player, but I wanted to,
To create
um,
a resource.
yeah, to create a resource and introduce students to the natural horn. Um, so, yeah, it was an exciting time, and and now I stay in touch with students of mine who are all around the globe. It's um, very rewarding to me to still stay in touch with all these great people and professionals now.
And you're still teaching, correct?
I'm still teaching. So in 2018, I retired from CCM. My wife and I retired from our jobs in Cincinnati, and we moved back to within about 15 minutes of where we lived all the years that I played in the orchestra. The reason for that was we have two grown sons and 6 grandkids right here. And so we moved back here to be close to the family. And I teach at Temple University. So I'm back on the Temple faculty and enjoying that tremendously. We've got really strong talent coming to Temple, and things are positive. Things are really good. And we also are developing more and more kind of a very close relationship with the Curtis Horn Studio. And we even have some projects in the works that we want to do together. So yes, I continue to give master classes. I have, if you go to my website, you'll see a category called Modular Music Masterclasses that lists any number of classes that I'm happy to go out and teach and combine in a modular way. I can go out for a day and do 3 or 4 different classes and even do some conducting and all of that.
That's a beautiful concept. For our listeners who don't know your website, could you plug a URL for us?
Oh, okay. Yes, randygardnerhorn.com. That will take you to my website where you'll see lots of video performances of horn choirs, and you can read about my publications, and then you'll see modular music masterclasses. And as I say, you can pick and choose. Have me out to your institution for a day or two, and we can put together a tailored group of sessions for the school.
That's wonderful. One of my first takeaways when I initially met you, and through the conversations we've had since then, through watching your lectures at the Horn Symposium this summer, is that teaching is very important to you. And I'm curious what some of the main values that you try to instill in your students are, whether that be as horn players or as people.
Okay. Well, first of all, you mentioned people, and something I've said a number of times is, and I believe strongly that it's more important to be a virtuoso person than a virtuoso horn player.
I think I've heard you say that exact line before.
Okay. Yeah, and so I want to convey that belief of mine in all that I do, and that goes into my teaching as well. From a horn playing and music teaching standpoint, I have 2 main goals. The first is to enable my students to achieve their professional dreams, their dreams with the horns. There are any number of ways that we can have satisfying careers and lives with the horn, and I just, it's not my dream that I want to help people realize. I want to help students really realize their dream. And the second goal is to enable my students to become their own best teachers. I teach how to study, how to practice, how to organize time, also mental approaches, and even I go into the importance of semantics and how to work on any skill, not just horn playing, but how to learn and how to work. And so those are my 2 main goals. And I teach in a very Socratic way in that I ask a lot of questions, leading questions, mind you, because I want students to determine their own solutions, if you will. I want to lead them to those solutions So that when they achieve what they're going for, or when they're heading in that direction, they own that. Okay, as opposed to me simply stuffing information into a person's brain. You know, and so anyway. The first chapter of my book, Good Vibrations, Masterclasses for Brass Players, is called The Foundation. And I think it's probably the most important chapter in that book because it deals with how to study and how to become your own best teacher in so many different ways. It lays the foundation for everything that follows. So, yeah. Those are my two main goals.
Well, you've created a beautiful segue into my next question, which was asking about how these values are reflected in your two publications. You have two books. They're both available for purchase through Legacy Horn Experience, who is the sponsor of this interview series. They are Mastering the Horn's Low Register and Good Vibrations, Masterclasses for Brass Players, as you just said. So I'll say my question again. How are these values reflected additionally in these books?
Okay, well, since we began with Good Vibrations here, yeah, so that first chapter lays the foundation, lays the groundwork for both technical and musical development. In that chapter, I lay the foundation for the study of both horn and music. I talk about semantics. I talk about mental attitudes. I talk about time management. I offer a way of evaluating both recordings and your practice sessions. For instance, I have a recording worksheet that works just as well for practice evaluation that begins by, number one, stating what your musical goal is. And by that, I mean, what do you want your audience to feel? What do you want the audience to take away from your performance? Okay? And then, what technical aspects do you need to have in place in order to achieve that musical goal? So always start with the music. Always start with your musical goals. Proceed to the technical goals that will help you achieve those musical goals. And then, you perform a passage, or you listen to a recording of yourself performing that passage, and you begin by evaluating the positives. Okay, what was good about that performance? And you might say, okay, my tone was beautiful. I played a great legato. Okay, what areas need improvement? Okay, well, that A flat was sharp. Okay, that's objective. Okay, okay. I need to have a steadier tempo. Okay, that's objective. And you want to state all of those items objectively, computer-like. You want to avoid, what's wrong with you, you numbskull? Why is that A flat sharp? No, it was sharp. Okay? Statement. And then you move into strategies for improving that area that needs improvement. Okay? And then you audiate your ideal performance. You take that knowledge and you transform your performance mentally. You audiate, you listen without any stimulus. You listen in your mind to your ideal performance. Then you record it or you perform it again with all this information. So it's a process that I teach. The foundation chapter is just chock full of these sorts of concepts.
It sounds like the written form of the Socratic method.
Yeah. And then another aspect to that book of mine, Good Vibrations, is that within each of the technical areas, I have placed skill tests. And throughout the book, there are 40 skill tests that are from the repertoire, both solo repertoire, orchestral repertoire, chamber music repertoire, that require whatever skill I'm addressing in the book. So the approach I have is, I maybe write some text about whatever, the technical skill is and how to achieve a high level of skill in that. And then I'll put exercises in the book to highlight how to practice these areas of technique. And then there are these pieces of repertoire that will test that skill. And if everything is great, well, that's fine. You move on to something else. If you need improvement, you've got both text and musical exercises to improve.
Work on that.
Yeah, to work on that. So those are the two, I guess you'd say, maybe somewhat unique approaches out of this book, and I cover virtually all the areas of technique I could think of. So
This sounds like a really methodical perspective on approaching the horn, maybe one that could be particularly helpful, especially for horn players who are looking to improve that maybe aren't taking lessons or aren't in a music program anymore.
yeah, I mean, essentially, I write lessons. And in Mastering the Horn's Low Register, the book is divided into two parts. The first part discusses the technical aspects of playing at a high level, becoming an excellent low player. Such things as exercises that I've written to address the break range, so that you can go smoothly throughout the entire range of the horn. Sound quality, airflow, embouchure considerations, all the technical aspects to becoming an excellent low player. And heck, first horn players have to start on a low B flat Heldenleben. You have to play a good strong low C at the end of Till Eulenspiegel. Everybody has to play Shostakovich fifth. Okay, the low tutti. I don't know that I've seen an audition in recent years that doesn't have Shostakovich fifth on it.
Exactly. Is this type of approach how you were taught to approach horn playing when you were a student, or is that something you've developed on your own?
Well, I suppose the basics were taught to me, but I've certainly developed my own approaches over the years. And mainly it's how I've worked to improve my own performance. And one one of my main tenets is you build on your successes, and not you don't want to focus on your failures. You want to focus on your successes and say, okay, well, now if I've succeeded here, if I've moved just a little bit in that direction, all I have to do is a little bit more of it. But a lot of this was taught to me, but a lot of it also I just developed by teaching a lot and thinking about my own playing. But the second part of Mastering the Horn's Low Register is a collection of 30 excerpt lessons, beginning with Shostakovich Fifth. Beethoven 9 is in there. All the main excerpts, but some excerpts that you also find on opera company auditions. First horn passages, like I say, Till, Heldenleben opening, that require low horn expertise, even from first horn players. And my approach, similar to what I was talking about in the recording worksheet, is to start with what I call musical keys. Okay, I firmly believe in knowing an entire piece of music, not just 16 bars, and knowing every term that a composer wrote down on the page. Composers put ink spots on staffs to tell you what pitches to play, but then they write words to tell you how to play those pitches, and understanding the orchestral context of a passage, so I talk about all of those elements of the particular excerpt and its place within the overall context of composition. And then I write technical keys, again, So here's your musical goal now. How do you go about achieving that musical goal? And so that's my approach there. And so I write that out, and then within the context of the music, I write tons of exercises and ideas on how to approach the technical elements of whatever passage is there.
That's just so interesting. In the interest of time, I want to shift our gear just a little bit. I'm under the impression that you were a student of Philip Farkas, and I'd like if you could elaborate on the type of impact studying with Farkas had on you and how that came into play with the Philip Farkas, Randy Gardner mouthpiece line you've designed with Legacy.
Phil Farkas was an enormous influence in my professional and personal development. And I still carry his influence on stage with me and into my teaching studio all the time. Okay, he has a bigger than life place in my life, and his constant searching to find answers, his constant his amazing creativity in working through all sorts of elements of horn design, horn playing, and his artistry. My gosh, I just I listened and listened and listened to him perform on recordings, and then I had a fantastic opportunity one summer to play assistant to him in a festival orchestra. We played Beethoven 9, Brahms 2, Ein Heldenleben, tons of great repertoire, and that was quite a lesson for me, just sitting next to him as he played that repertoire and assisting him. And he also was just a class act in every way, a real gentleman, and someone who had a terrific sense of humor and a great storyteller. Anyway, in so many ways I could go on and on about him. And then I was honored to become his teaching assistant when I started graduate school. And we talked about pedagogy and such. So yeah, I mean, he has a huge role in my success and yeah, in every way. Now, yeah, I could tell some funny stories, but I won't necessarily. Yeah. As far as the mouthpiece goes, there was a time in my senior year at college when he wanted me to change to a different mouthpiece to get more focus in my tone. And so he said, "Here," and grabbed this drawer out of his desk, and there must have been 100 mouthpieces in there. I don't know, there was just this drawer of mouthpieces.
I've seen similar drawers.
Yeah. And some of them were experiments that he had done on his own mouthpieces, but he didn't particularly, find to be the ideal that he was looking for. So there was this one mouthpiece that had been one of the original Farkas with the all caps letters. This is pre-Holton, one of the original Farkas models, where he had trimmed the rim down, he had bored it out just a little bit. He had really tweaked this mouthpiece, and it worked great. It fit me so well. That's the mouthpiece I played from then on, and including many years in the Philadelphia Orchestra. I played that when I won my audition. I played that for a number of years, and then I thought, recently I thought about maybe tweaking that a little bit, and came up with the design that is now the PFRG-1. So the rim is different. slightly than the one, and the cup is different to a degree as well. So it's a modification of that mouthpiece that was one of his modifications. So it's, a couple generations here. And I love that mouthpiece. I've been playing it since. It works great in the orchestra. It works great as a solo and chamber music on a mouthpiece. I think it's fantastic. And
So it's almost the product of two generations of really
yes.
intense pedagogical thought on mouthpiece approach.
Yeah, and it feels so comfortable. To me, it's just, yeah, it's great. And along the way, as we were experimenting on designs with Peter Pickett, he sent me one cup that really surprised me because, boy, I mean, the high register on it is so easy. It's the PFRG2. So, and I think it's a fabulous mouthpiece for playing Bach, Mozart, and that repertoire, the really refined high chamber repertoire or a Baroque classical repertoire. But the mouthpiece I play every day is the PFRG1, but I also have the number 2 on my shelf and
For when the classical concerts show up.
yeah. And now we have a variety of rim sizes. So it comes in a 7.0, a 7.25, and a 7.5 in the rim sizes. So it can fit a lot of different people.
So in the last few minutes that we have, I'm going to ask you a very difficult question, which is, what piece of advice that you received do you wish you'd taken sooner?
Yeah, that's that's an interesting question. I would have to say that perfectionism is your enemy. It's not just really difficult, but impossible to be perfect. Okay, and trying to become perfect. It can really be destructive. The idea, especially for students, is not perfection, but improvement.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every time I pick up the horn, I want to be a better horn player. Okay, but for several years, especially my first few years in the Philadelphia Orchestra, I really was all over myself about perfection. Okay. Until one of the veterans in the orchestra kind of took me aside and said, would you relax? I mean, I could tell a story about that, but yeah, and those were words that I needed to hear.
Perhaps not only that perfection is unsustainable, but perfection
Yes.
is unachievable.
Yes, yes. And so, every time, and this is one of the things that makes the really great orchestras stay great, is that everybody on that stage is working to make every note the best musical product that they possibly can every day without exception. And sometimes you hit a home run and sometimes you don't, but having that standard, a very high standard, is great as long as you realize some days you hit a home run and some days you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But the intention, the 150% intention is to make every note you play absolutely the greatest artistic quality that it can be. I did want to add one thing about Farkas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of the most valuable lessons I received from Mr. Farkas had to do with his practice of visualization. There was one time he just kind of was chatting with me, and he didn't very often speak about this kind of thing with people. He didn't want to step on anybody's philosophical or religious toes or anything. But he talked to me about, he said to me, Randy, there's one thing that's made more difference to my career than anything having to do with the horn. And so my antenna went out, right? I want to listen to this. And so he discussed with me, and we had several sessions on this afterwards, his practice of visualization. I had already been someone who meditated, but this is tacked onto it, if you will. But he talked about a particular technique of visualization that is so valuable when preparing for auditions, when preparing for big performances and things. But it's something that I've also used even when preparing for orchestral performances. Let's say I've got a big solo coming up. My favorite second horn solo in the repertoire is the opening of Mahler Ninth. Okay, so I'll be sitting in my basement practicing Mahler Ninth, and I'm actually visualizing the conductor giving me the downbeat, and bringing me in. I'm enveloped by the sound of the orchestra that precedes that. I see the stage, I see the conductor, I see my colleagues, I hear the orchestra, and I see a conductor bringing me in. That's one way of visualization. I actually teach a masterclass called Visualize to Realize that incorporates meditation and visualization. It's something I teach to my students. It was a very valuable lesson for me.
So you're using that to ensure that you're not practicing in the practice room. You are always performing in the concert hall, for example.
Yeah. And you can visualize two ways. And there's a great little book called The Mind Gym. It's mostly a sports book, and I love baseball, and it has a lot of baseball in it. And in that, they discuss two types of visualization. There's the perspective of internal visualization. In other words, you actually feel as though you're in your body and you see the external. There's also external visualization where you watch yourself from a hall. And there are various techniques to visualization that I found valuable over the years, something that I constantly have used. And that was really an important lesson for me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that extra nugget, and thank you additionally for the time today and the wisdom that you've shared, not only with me, but with all of our listeners. All of the things that we've talked about today are available either on the Legacy Horn Experience website or on Randy's website, which can you plug your URL for us again?
Randygardner horn.com. RandyGardnerHorn.com.